We may even come to prefer it. But adaptation ought not to be equated with sanity. It is possible to have a nation of adapters who are quite insane. Anyone who has lived in this century can hardly deny that. Now, it's not my intention this afternoon to give a Cassandra-like presentation. I know you'll be pleased to know this. In fact, quite the opposite. My talk wishes to address the question of how to remain sane in a furious, speeded-up technological society. And the way I hope to do it is to provide you with 6 questions, the answers to which can provide insights into the way technology intrudes itself into a culture. As I see them, the questions can be applied at 2 different levels and in 2 different ways. One can ask them about one's own life in relation to technology, and one can also ask them in relation to the general society. That is to say, the questions can have a political dimension. Now, when I'm done, if we have time, I would be happy to tell you, if you wish, how I have applied these questions to my own life, and you might be interested to know, since, as you can tell, I'm an eminently sane person. Now to my questions. Question 1 needs to be addressed when anyone tells us about a new technology. For example, interactive television, virtual reality, high-definition TV, the information superhighway, or whatever. The question is this: what is the problem to which this technology is a solution? Now, this question needs to be asked because there are technologies that are not solutions to any problem that a normal person would regard as significant. Although Vice President Al Gore is certainly a normal person, I am skeptical of the reasons even he gives for us spending billions of dollars to create an information superhighway. He says repeatedly that the highway will provide each of us with access to 500 or perhaps even 1,000 television stations. I am therefore obliged to ask, is this a problem most of us yearn to have solved? Indeed, need to have solved? Do we believe that having access to 40 or 50 stations, as we now do, is inadequate, and that we cannot achieve a fulfilled life unless we have 1,000 stations to choose from? What exactly is the problem to be solved here? Well, whatever it is, we are entitled to ask about it and even to be skeptical about it. A good example, by the way, of when such skepticism was helpfully applied concerns a question raised some years ago, a political question, as it turned out, as to whether or not the United States government should subsidize the manufacture of a supersonic jet. Both the British and French had already built SSTs, and a serious debate ensued in the halls of Congress and elsewhere as to whether or not we should have one of our own. And so the question was asked, what is the problem to which the supersonic jet is the solution? The answer, it turns out, was that it takes 6 hours to go from New York to LA in a 747. In a supersonic jet, it can be done in 3. Now, most Americans, I'm happy to say, did not think that that was a sufficiently serious problem to warrant such a heavy investment. Besides, some Americans asked, what would we do with the 3 hours we saved? And their answer was, we'd probably watch television. And so the suggestion was made that we put television sets on the 747s and thereby save billions of dollars. Now, in addition to this, another question was asked. Well, before I get to that, I should mention that 2 years ago, I went to buy a car, a Honda Accord, and which I'd been told was a pretty good car. And when I went to get it, the salesman told me that it had cruise control, for which there's an extra charge. And so I asked him, what is the problem to which cruise control is the solution? And he said, well, no one had ever asked him that question before. But then he said, it's the problem of keeping your foot on the gas. So I said, well, I'd been driving for 35 years, and I'd never really found that to be a problem. He said the car had electric windows, so you know what I asked him. And he was ready for me this time. He said, it's the problem of having to do this, or worse, this. I told him that I didn't really think this was a problem, and besides, I'm an academic and I live a rather sedate life, and a little exercise here and there. But I bought the Honda Accord with cruise control, with electric windows, because you cannot get that car without those things, which is worth just keeping in mind, because many people will say new technologies always increase our options. And of course, very often they do. But they just as frequently decrease our options, and we have to keep that in mind when we think about new technologies. Now, here's another question that I think we need to ask as a follow-up to the first one. After one has answered the question, what is the problem to which a particular technology is the solution, I think one must ask, whose problem is it? Now, in the case of the SST, the problem of getting to LA or London faster than 747s could do it was largely a problem for movie stars, rock musicians, and corporate executives. Hardly a problem that most Americans would regard as worth solving if it would cost them a lot of money. But this question, whose problem is it, needs to be applied to any technology. Most technologies do solve some problem, but the problem may not be everybody's problem or even most people's problem. We need to be very careful in determining who will benefit from a technology and who will pay for it. They are not always the same people. But let's say we have found a technological solution to a problem most people do have. We now come to a third question.